with me here in studio is James Esseks, a member of the Edie Windsor legal team in the DOMA case. Gentlemen, it's great to have you here. Ryan, I want to start with you because you were in the room when Justice Kagan read this excerpt from the 1996 House report about DOMA itself. Take a listen.
I'm going to quote from the House report here, is that Congress decided to reflect and honor a collective moral judgment and to express moral disapproval of homosexuality. Is that what happened in 1996?
We can kind of hear it there, but describe better for us the reaction to that from inside, and was that in the reflection of oral arguments a tipping point?
Sure. I mean, it's pretty much the closest thing you get in the Supreme Court to a gotcha moment, right? She was very clearly had this laid out and sort of put Paul Clement, who is on behalf of House Republicans, of course, in a strange position where he didn't. Obviously, he said that part of the number of people who voted in favor of DOMA were motivated perhaps by animus towards, towards gay rights or the LGBT community. But he said that he even admitted that if that was the only reason that this was motivated, that it should be properly struck down. But he claimed that it was really a matter of the country or the Congress trying to define or trying to keep uniform what marriage meant on a nationwide basis, and that's what the basis of his argument was. But it was the Kagan moment was very got a big reaction in the courtroom.
Well, it seems very interesting when we consider how both Prop 8 and DOMA itself, the court is very reflective about states' rights and where they fall under their purview. And James, during your argument during this case, Chief Justice John Roberts appeared skeptical that the LGBT community, they lack power in government action. Take a listen.
I suppose the sea change has a lot to do with the political force and effectiveness of people representing, supporting your side of the case. As far as I can tell, political figures are falling over themselves to endorse your side of the case.
James, as we look at this again and remind everybody the timeline of this, because Prop 8 was the day before and Wednesday was DOMA itself. So now, upon reflection, hindsight being 2020, what do you think that he was making there, the argument or the questioning of you based on the sea change of Americans feeling that marriage equality is a right that the LGBT community should have access to?
Well, look, I think he's talking about recognizing the reality in the country that many people are changing their minds about whether fairness requires the freedom to marry for same-sex couples. But, of course, in our system of government, individual rights don't get put up to a popular vote, and even if we have a certain amount of growing support in the country for the freedom to marry, the court still has a job to do, which is individual rights are protected by the Constitution, and the court is the body in our country that says what those rights are.
And let's take this from the aspect, and I don't want to get too legally here, legalese in the weeds, so to speak, but the standing issue, because that was pivotal in both days of Prop 8, who had the standing to be there. Certainly in the case for DOMA, who had the standing to be there, that the court actually brought in Vicki Johnson from Harvard to talk about who has the proper standing to bring this case, because I think a lot of people would be disappointed if the Supreme Court comes back in June and just says, well, no one had the standing to be here.
Indeed, and look, and it's hard to make predictions just based on the questions that the justices ask at oral argument, but I think the court's going to say that there is jurisdiction in the DOMA case, because the question there is there a fight here between Ms. Windsor and the United States that is sufficient to require the government, the court, to decide it? And it's very easy. The United States has $363,000 of Edie Windsor's money, and they won't give it back.
And that was when she lost her wife, Thea, that she was taxed in the death tax of losing over $300,000 that would not have happened if the government properly recognized her marriage of over and her relationship of over 40 years with Thea. Ryan, last but not least, Chief Justice Kennedy, who is truly considered to be a swing vote in all of this, certainly with DOMA and with Prop 8. But take a listen to what his thoughts were about Prop 8 from Tuesday.
The problem with the case is that you're really asking, particularly because of the sociological evidence you cite, for us to go into uncharted waters. I just wonder if the case was properly granted.
So again, that back to standing, is he looking for a way when it comes to Prop 8 to come back with something very narrow that would define what Prop 8 means to California, not the rest of the country?
Well, it really makes you curious what happened behind the scenes, because obviously only four of the justices are required to take up the case to begin with, so we don't know exactly what the breakdown was, but clearly Kennedy seems to indicate that he wasn't in favor of taking this up to begin with, and maybe thought that it was, perhaps getting out a little too far ahead of where the public at, even though the public is very clearly moving in one direction on this.
Gentlemen,
so I think, it's really...
So go ahead real quickly, Ryan.
Oh, no, yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. Ryan Riley, really fascinating. James, really fascinating. Great to meet you in person. Send my best to Edie, who I think is just, cool as the day is long. But we shall all be waiting throughout the summer to see how they come back, and late June is when we should have